Alrighty, we are back for the second show of the week, and I am joined but no other than Ed Tait from the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So Ed, thanks for making the time. I know you're a busy guy, but it's
I
good to have you
appreciate you
on.
asking me to come on. That's cool.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and again, I like to give the CFL a voice during the off season when very few people talk about it. And I know I had mentioned it last night on the show, and then as I was kind of thinking about it, well, you bring a good voice to the CFL in the offseason. With the huddle, you've had guys on, whether it's the newcomers or whether it's Bob Irving or whatever else, right? So kind of stay in the news, so to speak. I think that's
Yeah,
huge.
yeah. When I came over here from the Free Press, that was one of the things we wanted to do is that make sure that things didn't go dark in the off season, so to speak. So we do
Mhm.
quite a bit of content on the site, writing. With the huddle, as you mentioned, we do our handled internally podcast. There's the neon light for it behind there, Darren Cameron and I. So you're right. Things have sure changed in the media world, and so with the mainstream media shrinking, it's important for us to, as a website, all CFL sites, all pro teams, to try to make sure that we're generating content too.
Yeah, most definitely. So what do you kind of enjoy about that? Has there been a favorite interview that's kind of stuck out to you and that sort of thing?
Well, you mentioned the huddle. It's been a lot of fun. We started it last year to try to give a different. Like I'm a newspaper guy, right? So I'm so used to writing. It was fun for me to get out of my comfort zone a little bit. And one of my favorite things is just having a conversation with people. So when we started to sit down with players and coaches last year, just like we're doing right now, it's a little bit more casual than when you've got a scrum of reporters around a guy and you've got 5 minutes where you stick your mic in his face. So we had a lot of fun with the show last year. Sergio Castillo, we did a thing with him. One of the clips that we pulled from him has over 1 million hits on Instagram, which is unbelievable. Uh, so that's fun. It's been a lot of fun to do things like that. And again, get for a guy like me, an older guy like me that is so used to writing to try to do some different things. It's been fun.
Yeah, definitely. I heard Sergio at the Pro Sports Faith Night. He sure had the crowd.
Oh
He had the
man,
crowd in the palm of his hand. It was
absolutely.
amazing. It was so good.
Yeah.
And he remembered me and my kids from Labor Day. So I
Oh,
mean
cool.
that's huge.
Yeah, very cool.
So speaking of you being a newspaper guy, you got your start at the Star Phoenix. Is this correct?
No, actually, I was at Red River College. I finished at U of M. I have a arts degree in political science, and
Hmm.
then couldn't get a job in radio or TV, so I went to the CRECOM program at Red River. And in my second term, I had a job placement at the Winnipeg Sun, and during that placement, I got offered a job, which was pretty fun, pretty rare. I didn't, and so I went back to school and said, "Look, I've been offered a full-time job," and they said, well, that's the whole point of our program. So you don't have to come to class anymore. You graduate. So that was fun. It was a good way to finish. And so I worked at the Sun for 8 years, went to Saskatoon, as you mentioned. And a year after I was there, the Sun called me back with a promotion offer. And then I went to the Free Press in 99 and then 2016 over here to the Bombers. So, yeah, I think. It's funny. I got hired on April Fool's Day by the Sun. So you can read into that what you will. But I think this year will be my 38th year in media. So that's crazy.
That is, yeah, that's I mean, shoot, you're probably one of the longer ones in Winnipeg. If if
Hmm.
you kind of do the math, right?
Yep. Yep.
Bob, again, Bob Irving's exited the scene, people that come to mind and that sort of thing. So, what have been some of your kind of highlights? Again, covering the Bombers. So, how do you kind of separate again, fan versus journalist?
That is a great question. So, um, when I was a kid, my dad was a Bomber fan, and so you grow up in a Bomber household, right?
Hmm.
And then when I started at the Sun, I was doing soccer and junior hockey. And then just before training camp in 1990, they said, "You can be the bomber writer now. We're making a change." And it's hard not to be a fan. You have to kind of train yourself not to be cheering, and it has to show up in your copy, right? You can't be praising them when they get smoked 50-0 or something like that. So you lose your integrity uh, and your credibility if you write that way. But I can remember 1990, the East Final, Bombers versus Toronto. And if the Bombers win, obviously they're going to the Grey Cup. It was at the old Winnipeg Stadium. And my boss had told me, uh, look, if the Bombers are in the Grey Cup, you're going. If the Bombers aren't in the Grey Cup, you won't go. So I don't know how many Bomber fans will remember this, but in the fourth quarter of a pretty tight game, Tom Burgess, who was slow as hell, great quarterback, slow as hell, ran like he had a fridge tied to his back. He scrambled for a first down to set up the game-winning field goal, and I couldn't help it, but I was pumping my fist under the table in the press box because it meant that the win meant that I got to go cover that game.
Right, right.
So there's a lot of moments like that where, uh, and over time, I think I took it to the extreme for sometimes. You try so hard not to be a fan that you can become overly critical.
Hmm.
And so there's a danger there because you have to remember that you're not writing to impress your boss or somebody else in the sports department. You're writing for Bomber fans still. And if you become too jaded or too negative, I think you lose people too because even in a 3-15 or a 4-14 season, people want some sort of hope that, hey, look at this young guy. He's busting his ass even though they've lost 10 in a row. Or look at this guy. He's a pretty good prospect. Or this guy's getting his first start. And I think I had to I had to get that back again a little bit, remembering that you're writing for the fan and not to try to impress your boss or somebody else in your department.
Right, yeah, and then when you mention that, right, you go through maybe the Joe Mack years,
Oh
then
yeah,
well, Keto Pablo, he
yeah,
had a great debut. Okay, well, there's some hope, right?
exactly.
And then moving to the new stadium, and then
Yep.
O'Shea comes in, and as I was saying last night, this is kind of the glory years
Hmm.
for the Bombers, and yes, three in a row, but to make the five straight Grey Cup. So how has this run been? And again, what were your emotions in 2019 in particular?
Yeah. Okay. So the run has been amazing, and I'm old, but I'm not old enough to remember the real glory days of the late 50s and 60s that my dad and a lot of older fans always used to talk about. 4 wins in 5 years and
Right.
all those great teams with Bud Grant. So those are the glory days. But given what's happened in pro sports now with free agency and all these 1-year contracts and players moving all over it, it's really hard to keep a team intact. And so for any team to get to 5 straight Grey Cups is an accomplishment. I'm with you. It stings that they've lost 3 in a row, um, because there could be a couple in there that were tight that should be. We're talking about 3 or 4 championships here.
Yeah.
Um, but it's been special. It's a special group to be around, and to be around Mike O'Shea is pretty amazing. And to your question about 2019, so I came in 2016, and in my years at the Free Press and at the Sun, you're always writing about the Grey Cup drought, and it gets larger and larger and larger with every November, right?
Right.
Then 2019 comes along, and I'd been with the club since 2016 at that point. And in the fourth quarter, that game was a blowout, as you know. I walked down to the sidelines at McMahon Stadium so that I can be there to run on the field too, to not to celebrate, but to get interviews, right? And to be there to capture the scene. And as the clock's ticking down, I look around me and there's guys that are my buddies now, like Brad Foddy, the equipment guy, Darren Cameron, Al Couture, the head athletic therapist. They're in tears
Yeah.
as the clock's ticking down. That's how emotional it was for them. And that's when it hit me that for some of these people that have been behind the scenes here, grinding it out all these years, they're finally getting one. That was a pretty powerful moment for me too.
Mhm. Yeah. I know I've talked to Darren Bombing as well, and he said, yeah, after he walked around the field, got very emotional, and he tried to separate that. But yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, we're looking at 29 years, right?
That's right.
So pretty significant. I know it's a big deal when I deal with reps. I'm in the sales world, and they weren't even alive when they won. So I mean, it's
Right.
it is that significant. What do you think the Bombers mean to the city of Winnipeg? Like everybody has that different perspective, city, province, etc.
Uh, that's an interesting question too, because I think it's always been an important part of this town, right? You go back, this team's been around since 1930. So, there's a lot of people with a lot of connections, a lot of people that have different memories. And some people still remember old Osborne Stadium and, or the opening of Winnipeg Stadium in the early 50s. So, uh, I think there's a kind of a tradition that it's and a part of the community for all kinds of reasons. I get fans that send me stuff. They're cleaning out their basement, and I'll get um, a copy of a program from a training camp at old Canada Packers when they used to train over there in St. Boniface, and people have autographs. Someone sent me an autograph book of that has Leo Lewis and Kenny Plain, and they don't want it anymore. It was their parents, and they're trying to clean up. And we've got stuff. I've got one of Fritzie Hansen's contracts in my office. So people keep this stuff because it matters to them, right? And I think we saw that. You mentioned 2019, the Grey Cup parade that year,
Mhm.
and people came out of the woodworks, and I'll never forget that too. And the scene at the Forks, and we all talk about Chris Strevler and I'm lit, you're lit, we're all having a great time kind of comment. But it was the ride along the way too to see people bringing their kids to that. And I don't know, if the Jets win the Stanley Cup, I think we'll see that again with their connection. Uh, this is a tight, this is a what do they all say? It's a small town but a city still. It feels like a small town. And
Yep.
I think that's the football team and the hockey team really means something to people too, because it's a kind of a gathering place. And I'll tell you what, you know what it's like here on a summer night here on a Bomber home game. It's pretty spectacular. It was a
It,
long-winded answer. Sorry, buddy.
Hey, no problem. I know I asked about three questions in 1.5 sentences, but yeah, recently being a season ticket holder, I'm for years I just kind of go to the games, but I've gotten to know people in my section and like way beyond the
Hmm.
football realm, and again, that's what I appreciate, and we're all pulling for one cause, so that's
Yep.
huge.
Yep.
Where do you see the Bombers kind of going this year? It is kind of a big year, rumor has it.
Uh, Yeah, it's funny. I know we're going to be trotting to the football club, going to be trotting out a lot of information in the next little while. But I was talking to someone the other day that had forgotten that the Grey Cup is here this year. So trust me, we'll be promoting the crap out of that for the next few months. But it will really start heating up in the next little while. I was talking to somebody in the office here the other day, and I'll be honest, there's been a fair bit of negativity around the Bombers and free agency here with some of the losses, right? Like Kenny Lawler is gone, and Terrell Ford has gone to join his brother Trey, and Liam Dobson, and there's been a lot of change. But as I was saying, I was talking to somebody in the office here yesterday, and there's a lot of optimism that we could be better this year. The Bombers could be better because of some of the additions, and I think we forget that sometimes that with Lawler and Ford and Dobson, those are the big ones to me. This team has brought in James Vaughters from Calgary and Jonathan Jones from Toronto. We got three new receivers in Dylan Mitchell, Jareth Stearns, Reggie White Jr. Those are potential starters. Gavin Cobb from the Manitoba Bisons, ex of Edmonton's in there.
Yeah.
Peyton Logan's going to upgrade the kick return game and give some depth behind Brady Oliveira. So there's a lot to like, I think. Has the rest of the West Division gotten better? Absolutely. But we'll see, right? There's lots of teams that win free agency, as we say every year. And then when, the ball's put on the tee in June and July, they struggle or, they're not as good as we thought. So I think the jury's out, but that's what you would say about any team. But I really like some of the additions because I think it's made this team better, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and we'll see what happens.
Yep, I completely agree because again, people get familiar with familiarity. Okay, well, no, there's another guy that can fill in. Like, give this guy a chance. And
Exactly.
I've always said, as long as O'Shea and those guys are there, like, I'm not really worried. There's a game plan, and then How do you see Hogan fitting in as the new offensive coordinator?
Yeah, that's going to be really one of the cool storylines to track during the year, and we really won't know right until you want to give him the benefit of the doubt and the changes too. Yeah, I don't know if we'll get a true feel for how he's doing until maybe even Labor Day. You got to give a guy a chance to get comfortable and the players around him to get comfortable. But I thought it was really important for Coach O'Shea to also hire Jarius Jackson
Mm.
as the quarterbacks coach and as a guy that was, I mean, he did a really good job in Edmonton last year when after they made the coaching change. They had some really good offensive numbers. So I know a lot of the players think very highly of Jason Hogan. Brady Oliveira is an important name and loves the guy for what he did to help him through some tough times when he first took over for Andrew Harris. So I think Jason's pretty smart. I know a lot of people think it's like the Jordan Younger promotion last year, right? When you've got a guy on your staff that uh, deserves a chance, you can't just keep icing him for a while because other teams are going to come calling. And I think that was one of the concerns about Jason Hogan, too, is that he's got such a good reputation already that other teams were making some phone calls about maybe stealing him away. But, jury's out, too, on that. We'll see how he does.
Yeah, we definitely will, and I think it's going to be more of a run-heavy offense. Just a wild guess.
Well, if Brady has said he has his ears still, yeah.
Yes, that's exactly it. So if you can average more than 7 yards a rush, then let's go. How does a game day look for you, Ed? Uh, a home game, away game. I see you there in the tailgate hanging out with Derek Taylor
Yep.
and Doug Brown,
So,
but is it a
yeah, I
6
would
a.m.
say
wake up call?
they are, well, they're quite different home and away. Um, Home game days are a lot of fun. The guys here, I probably shouldn't be saying this in case the boss is watching, but we try to sneak out for a round of golf on home game days. And then I come into the office after that. I'm on the CGOB pregame show for a couple of hours or an hour and a half.
Hmm.
And then, so if it's a 7:30 game, let's say I'd be on from 5:30 to 7. I go up to the press box. Then I do a hit with CGOB at halftime with Greg Mackling. And then after the game, it's kind of a mad scramble. You come down to the locker room, grab as many interviews as you can. Uh, the coaches' press conference is in the media room right after that. And then I come back to my little bunker here and try to make something into English for the website, get it posted as quickly as possible. Now, the benefit of working for the team website as compared to the when I was at the Free Press was that we had a hard deadline at the Free Press. And it used to drive me nuts when I was covering the Jets too, that a game would end at 9:30, 9:40, and you'd have to like 10:15 to get your story done. And that 10:30, that includes getting down, getting interviews. So I have a little bit more leeway with a bomber site because we have more time and I'm not constrained like that. So that's a home game. On the road, a bunch of us on staff, we will go out for dinner the night before a game, which is one of the highlights for me. And then on game day, we usually go for breakfast, a walk, and then we're just kind of sitting around for a night game, especially uh, sitting on our hands for a walk, waiting for the bus to go. So that there's a bunch of buses that take the team to the stadium, and depending on my maybe commitments before the game, I'll take the second or third bus. And then it's the same thing, only just on the road. It's really funny. People, it's not as glamorous as you might think after a game on the road because we've got nowhere to write, and you've got to be down where the team is because when Brad, the equipment guy, comes in and says we're rolling out, you got to be going too. They're not waiting for you to finish your story or
Right.
for our video guy to download videos. But I'll be sitting in the hallway or sitting in a locker stall when the guy's in the urinal 3 feet away, writing on my hands and knees to try to get a story done. But it's part of the gig. It's fun as hell.
Yeah.
It's still exciting to me. Still a pleasure. It's still a privilege to be on the road covering the team.
That's good. I mean, I mean, yeah, as I say, you do a fantastic job. I mean, you have great insights, and I know you've done some color
Appreciate that.
commentary as well. So I know that comment was raised on my Facebook by Daryl. I know Daryl will be listening as my light has gone out. Uh, that you provide great insights because yeah, I mean that's why we tune in. So that's definitely
That's
important.
kind of you to say. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, no worries. Who have been some of your mentors that have helped you along the way?
Um, when I first started at the Sun, Jim Ketchison was the sports editor. He was a guy that really helped me at the beginning. Boy, I was telling someone the other day, this is how much the newspaper industry has changed. I first walked into the sports department way back there in the mid to late 80s. There was a haze of blue smoke at the end because Jim, our sports editor, smoked cigars and was still allowed in the building then. And it was just right out of a movie, right? There
Right.
were older reporters than me that still had the old flask of whiskey in their desktop drawer and smoking the cigarettes, and so it's really changed. But Jim was the guy that got me my start. I've had real good bosses in Dave Kamoski and Pat Doyle at the Sun. Ed Willis, who just recently retired, was a spectacular columnist at the Sun. I get to the Free Press. I had a lot of fun, a lot of good mentors there too. One of my best friends was Randy Turner, who passed away a few years ago. We used to spend hours on the phone just talking about writing and ideas and laughing our butts off at stuff. And then Bob Irving is one of my best friends still. And I always tell this when he retired, someone from the Free Press called me to write a story on him. And
Mhm.
when I started covering the Bombers in '90, Bob was, was already an icon, right? He had been calling the games. And so you kind of look up to him and see the way he behaves. But over time, I used to look at him in awe, and then over time you kind of become buddies. And now I think he's in Texas. He's texting me all the time, and he's become one of my good buddies. So he's been a mentor. Just, he's a radio guy. I was a newspaper guy, but you learn from just watching someone like that how he handles people, how he does interviews.
Mhm.
Uh, uh, I mean, I'm probably missing a ton of people here, but those are the ones that jump out right away.
Yeah, and when you bring up Bob Irving, I remember that interview that you had with him. And he said, I don't know what to say, but just to shake your hand. So I just knew right there and then, yeah, it was a great mentorship, friendship, as you say. And
Hmm.
you could tell that over the time listening to you guys on the air. Where he goes, oh yeah, we'll bring in Eddie Tait here, like, yeah,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts? So that's good.
Well, I remember the first time he asked me to do color. I think it was a game in Montreal, and the color guy wasn't available, or something had happened. And I mean, I was really nervous, right? Because
Right.
it's one thing to speak to you like this. It's a little bit more casual. But, first of all, you're sitting beside a legend, and then what's going out there over the CGOB airwaves. And I
Yes.
was quite nervous, and I took a ton of different notes than I normally would. And I said to Bob, well, what do you, what kind of advice do you have? And he says, well, don't try to be like a Doug Brown guy that's going to break down the play, because that's not your level of expertise. You're a storyteller. Get out there and tell stories, tell what you see, and then that'll be fine. And he says, and plus, remember to every, begin every sentence with, that's right, Bob. That's right, Bob. So that's what I did. And we had a blast. And he asked me to do a whole bunch more, and Derek too. It's a lot of fun. It's a different way to watch a game or call a game and prep for a game, because you know that if uh, Saskatchewan's field corner makes a play, you better have a little nugget to say about him. And you don't necessarily have to say that when you're writing a story. So, or you've got time to look up a little bit about him.
Yeah.
That's been fun.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, yeah, I don't blame you for being nervous, but I like the advice that you gave you. That's right, Bob.
That's right, Bob.
Good, good. So how do the next, I guess, kind of as we wrap her up here, how do the next few months shape up for you? I saw we're 100 days until the Bomber home opener.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's crazy.
that is nuts.
Yeah.
And so again, a lot of things are going to happen. I was thinking you guys had that fireside chat about a year ago with Bryant and Strebler. And my daughter was the one that asked if Bryant
Oh
was
yeah.
named after Stanley. That was her.
Yeah. Wow.
Um, so are there going to be some of those kind of meet and greets, or
Oh
how do
yeah.
the next 2 months look for you, Ed?
Well,
Chad?
we've got with the soccer team too. Valor is already in training camp. So after I finish with you, I'm going to go over there to write something. So
Hmm.
that's a little bit different too. That's a new thing since 2019. For the Bombers, I'll be going to Regina later this month for the National Combine. Uh, and it's going to be interesting because there's been some changes to the scouting staff, as you know, with Ted Gavaya and Cyril Penn leaving.
Yes.
So I get a chance to meet some of our new hires out there. I'm expecting, and then the draft comes up. It's just funny how I was mapping out the next few months yesterday, writing down what I'm going to have to do and sort of important dates. And I mean, training camp starts in early May. The draft is in late April. It comes in a hurry here now, and
Mhm.
I told myself I woke up yesterday and say, man, I got to get organized. So that's what I was spending most of yesterday is trying to map out the next 6 months. So it's going to be fun. And as you mentioned right off the top with the Grey Cup here, let's hope the Bombers are in it. But if they're not, you still have to churn out some content and do some things. So our huddle show will be starting up every Tuesday just before training camp, so early May.
Okay.
Probably try to do one before that, maybe around the draft. Um, We've got the Handled Internally podcast that I do with Darren. We'll probably be doing a few more of those before the season starts. And we just hired another video guy yesterday. So the Bombers, I give them credit. We are all in on content, and we've got a big staff. When I started, it was just me and one other person. Now there's an office of one, two, three, five people over there, and we are trying to feed all the social media platforms and do all kinds of stuff, keep the sponsors happy. So it's busy, but a good busy, right? And as you said at the top, we're kind of in the glory years. I know that's a tough thing for some people to accept when you've lost three straight Grey Cups, but the run has been spectacular. It's been great to cover. And because the team wins so much, the engagement we get from fans on our content is the numbers are through the roof. So let's hope that that continues because it's a big year, as you said too, right off the top. It's a huge year for this franchise, and I hope they can keep it rolling.
Yeah, it definitely is, and that's where I give the Bombers a ton of credit. You talk about the content, like keep it prevalent. Again with those sorts of things when other social medias or other TV networks,
Hmm.
you can name them, don't necessarily cover them, and that's how you keep it. Wade Miller and everybody there, you guys all deserve a pat on the back times 10, honestly.
I appreciate that. Thanks
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, because my kids they want to go to every Bomber game. I mean, shoot, it's they want to go to every Labor Day Classic now. It's
Awesome.
it's quite wild, right? So
Awesome. Yeah.
it's it's it I think it speaks beyond because it provides community and relationship. I just kind of keep going back to that as well. Um,
That's a good point too. And
mhm.
I don't mean to steal you for too much longer. I was watching.
No.
I had a coach's copy of Dunnigan's 713-yard passing game from 1994. And you talked about how your kids like to come to the games now. So that game in 94 was in July of 94 was a Grey Cup rematch against Edmonton. It was Chris Walby's 200th game. And I think the attendance was 22,000 that night. So we're talking about a piece of history, right? That's the highest passing yardage in pro football and in the CFL history. And Walby's getting honored, a Winnipeg guy, and there's 22,000 people there. I think we had six sellouts last year. So it's grown. Like, the population of Winnipeg has grown too, but I think it's become such a good place to come and party in the summer. People love the winning, right? And there's been a lot of winning, and I think that helps sell too. But it's just to me that really struck me is that was a really good football team with a star player in Dunnigan, surrounded by a cast of all-stars. That team, I think, went 14-4 that year, and there's 22,000 people there on a perfect summer night. That would be a huge disappointment if that was the crowd total for any game right now.
And that's crazy because not every game was televised in 1993.
That's true. And that game was not televised.
Yep, that's
Crazy.
exactly it. So that I mean, everybody, you can listen to Bob Irving, but
Hmm.
again, you're 7,000 short of a 29,503. I think that's
That's right. Yeah.
right.
Good for
So
you.
I think I'm kind of a screw guy, and now you're at 32,000, right?
Yeah.
So, and again, there's payment options and whatever else for season tickets. So it makes it
Hmm.
all good.
Yeah.
Flexibility's definitely the name of the game. And so, yes, how it has grown. That's yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head there.
Yep.
Sure.
I think the league's in a better place too. Remember back then too, there was a lot of concerns about the future of the league, and then that was when the U.S. expansion had started. And I remember covering games in Sacramento and Shreveport and Baltimore, and I'm thinking, what is going on here? This is crazy. It's fun, but this is not going to last. I've got stuff in my office that I just collected a Shreveport Pirates hat. I have a Birmingham Barracudas flag because I knew it was going to go sideways, and I thought I better grab some of this stuff because it's collector's items. But the league's in a better place than it was back then too, and I think that's part of it. The perception of the league has changed and gotten better too
Mhm.
since the mid '90s when people were wondering whether it was going to survive. So
Totally. And I
yeah,
think that, yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm going to tell you something here that that I think they had to expand
that's right.
to survive, right? So, and again, I like what you say too that the league is in a better place. Yeah, there's some spots, but like
Hmm.
I like look at the times we're in. I mean, let's read the news. People can read the news and just okay, like like this is it. Like it's again, everybody got hit by the COVID, but
Yep.
it's slowly building that momentum. And again, more to important that Winnipeg hits it out of the park this year with the Grey Cup.
Let's hope so.
Yeah. Any last thoughts, Ed, before I let you go? This has been great.
No, I would just say to all those people that consume podcasts like yours or diehard fans like yours, I appreciate you guys. And our number, like I said, our number, I don't mean to brag too much, but there's guys over there that are working their butt off. And that matters. Every time you click on a story or watch a video or like a post on X, it matters. And it says something about the strength of the franchise and the strength of this league. And I appreciate hearing from fans. Like I said from the beginning, we've got to remember as content creators who we're providing the content for.
Right.
And so the engagement that we get from Bomber fans, whether they're diehards like yourself or people that just are coming. We got people that come to games on home games that don't care what the score is. They just want to go down to the rum hut, hang
Hmm.
out with their friends, or barbecue before the game and come over. And if the Bombers win, that makes it better. But if it's
Right.
a cool night and they have fun, so we're trying to appeal to everybody. And if that would be my final message. Thanks to everybody that consumes all the stuff we do.
Most definitely. Good, good. Well, Ed, I'll let you get off to Valor practice.
Yeah. Okay.
But as I say, if you ever want to come on again, you're more than welcome to. I really appreciate it once again.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no worries. We'll see you at the stadium.
Right on.
Take care. Bye bye.
See ya.